Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Rob Browne here with you on this Thursday college football basketball blitz. Lots to cover. There always is, man. We got David Schultz, WNSP FM 105 down in Mobile, all sports FM format, the first in America. I will talk with him. Gary Harris, Tide 100.9 WVUA TV 23 in Tuscaloosa in the second segment. Hour number 2, the AD angle. Matt Neen from over in Memphis, Rhodes College. John Hartwell, most recently AD at Utah State, is going to check in with us as well. We'll talk some college basketball and a lot to talk about. We're here every Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Central. Delta the dog here with us. We are also broadcast. If you miss it, check us out, www.sidelines.live, or go to 680thefan.com, the podcast park in Atlanta, and Radio Alabama Kicks 96.3. And we're working on building a network of stations carrying us on terrestrial radio and all over. Follow us on Twitter at sidelines_live. Let's get going. David Schultz, always love having you on here. There's a lot going on. College football, college basketball, about 8 weeks into it. It's hard for a lot of people to really realize that, but we started college basketball that long ago. We're starting to get into serious conference play. But I want to talk with you first, get your thoughts on the bowls, especially as we got later, they got better. But how powerful was it to have 2 semifinal games in the college football playoff as entertaining? Because in the 9 years we've had the playoff, we've never had 2 semifinals like what we had Saturday. And is that foreboding, telling us, hey, the national championship game is going to be as good? Because it's going to be hard to beat these first 2.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be nice if that was the case. A lot of people think Georgia's going to, roll over TCU, but a lot of people thought, including me, Michigan was going to roll over TCU. So I'm certainly not going to make that prediction again. It's just nice to have it. I'm not sure how much we like having it on New Year's Eve, but it is what it is. We can't really change that. That's the way the calendar falls, and that's when they have it. Obviously, it was a couple of great ball games, and there were a lot of good football games, right? That Tulane USC game, right? I mean, that could have been, a 5-12 matchup, right? Pretty good.
Yeah,
is what happened. So, Tulane, I think the biggest thing that happened over the bowl season is that Tulane beats USC, because that can justify, right, the 12 team playoff. That's what I like. I want to see more teams. Although USC would have been a home game, I get it, but that doesn't change the fact that, I don't know how much that would have changed if someone fumbles on the goal line, the ball goes out of bounds. So that's what I took from it. Obviously, to have a couple of great games is a lot of fun. It's good for the ratings. It's good for college football. It's good for TV. It's good for interest. But I'm not sure, if it has anything to do with what we're going to see on Monday night.
Yeah. When you talk about Southern Cal and Tulane, we had one of our guests on a couple of days ago. It was Franz Beard, GatorbaitMedia.com, pointed out the last 60 years, roughly since Tulane left the SEC, they've won 262 football games. Southern Cal has won like 562. Significant. I mean, right. More than 2 to 1. And I thought that Southern Cal, they played Utah twice, lost both times. They played this Tulane team. I don't think they expected to have to play a full 60. Caleb Williams is a heck of a quarterback. Michael Pratt,
sure,
that game-winning drive, that was significant. What the Sunbelt, Conference USA, American Athletic Conference, it. Those teams get just as motivated, if not more, in a bowl game like that, don't they?
Well, certainly Tulane was going to be motivated. USC, they wanted to be in the playoff, and they're not going to be motivated to play Tulane. That doesn't change the fact that USC's defense stinks. Even if they win the ball game the way they should, they still gave up 37 points to Tulane. So, their defense stunk against Utah. I know Caleb Williams that's when he got hurt, but their defense, missing tackles and not tackling was just bad. I didn't see a whole lot of the Tulane USC game, but obviously the defense wasn't very good in that game either. So that's a thing moving forward, right? I mean, what is Alex Grinch over there? Lincoln Riley doesn't seem to care about defense. Will outscore you, and that's the same method of it leaves very little room for error when that's the case. Kind of like the low-scoring teams, like Troy or in college basketball, Virginia, that you're always in those ball games, and if you make a mistake at the wrong time, you're going to end up losing. So that's how Virginia basketball can go from losing in the first round of the NCAA tournament to the next year winning the NCAA tournament. And then Troy, the same thing. Troy had a bunch of one-score ball games because they ended up making the plays at the end, but they could have lost. Army missed a field goal, and they could have beat them, right? The South Alabama, a couple of calls don't go their way, and then they missed a wide-open receiver. They could have won that football game. So when you have, a little room for error like USC does, you kind of have to you got to win by 2 scores, or else what actually may happen actually did happen. They're up by 15 with 4.5 minutes left to go in the game. 15. How do you lose that? And they did.
Yeah. Well, you look at, let's go to the Georgia and Ohio State game. Last week, going into that game, I felt like, all right, Ohio State's going to probably come out with their hair on fire, jump on top early, take a lead. Georgia will come storming back. And that's what happened, but it took them a full 60 minutes to do it. And you look at Ohio State in the Michigan game, they gave up 45. They gave up 42 against Georgia. That's 87 points in those 2 games. Yeah. What is going on with defense?
I don't know, because Georgia defense hasn't showed up either.
No,
right?
They haven't.
The best of the game that the Georgia defense played was actually most of the game against Alabama in the national championship game, right? The defense didn't show up in the SEC championship game last year. They struggled in the second half, although it may have been some reserves against LSU. They gave up a bunch of yards and a bunch of points. Stetson Bennett the fourth would have been blamed if Georgia loses because he didn't play all that well. But, Jalen Carter had 1 tackle. How does Jalen Carter have 1 tackle in a semifinal game? By the way, Will Anderson for Alabama, 0 tackles. Those 2 guys are going to be your first 2 defensive players taken in the draft, and they combined for all of 1 tackle. So that's a little bit strange. But I don't think the Georgia defense played very well, and they have not played very well. They're supposed to be where all the talent is, right? It's not Stetson Bennett and his wide receivers or the offensive line or the running backs this year. There was much more talent there last year, but all the talent has been on the Georgia defense, and they just haven't showed up. Now, they showed up eventually, or maybe the scheme changed. They started blitzing. The defense came to play at the end of the game where they hold Ohio State to a field goal attempt that put them up by 6, and they hold them to, a field goal attempt at the end of the ball game. And so the defense showed up eventually, as did the offense. In that ball game, it's very odd. I'd love to hear from Stetson Bennett, like what happened through the first 3.5 quarters, because he just wasn't pulling the trigger. I don't think he was scared, but maybe he lost confidence in what he was seeing, and he just wouldn't throw it to his first open receiver. He was thinking about it instead of reacting. And then Kirby sort of pulled the string on him when he almost throws an interception at the end of the half. And he's like, you know what? Let's take a knee and go back into the locker room. And even Kirby didn't have some great things to say for him, although Stetson Bennett the fourth has him playing in his second national championship in 2 years, as if that's a typical thing for Georgia. So it was really interesting. You're right. I don't know what's going on with the defenses. The other thing I think we see, Rob, with a lack of practices or the lack of games is a bunch of turnovers. There's been a bunch of turnovers in all of these ball games, where there are fumbles or interceptions, a bunch of turnovers. And so I think that goes, you haven't played a game in about a month or so. That would be one of the things that I took away from these bowl games. There just seemed to be a bunch of turnovers. Defensively, that's kind of the way that everybody wants the game, right? All the rules are towards the offense. So we don't want 10-6 ball games or anymore. Or the Rams-Patriots Super Bowl, which was 13-3. We want, missing field goals when we're in the 40s, or we want TCU and Michigan in the 50s, or we want to see LSU score 63 points, something along those lines. That's what they want. That's what gets the eyeballs on the TV and keeps them coming back.
Yeah, and just watching the games like Georgia and Ohio State, CJ Stroud is an exceptional quarterback. You had 2 of the 4 guys that were up there on the podium at the Heisman Trophy announcement this year in that game, Stroud and Bennett. Everybody will tell you CJ Stroud's better because he's a big-time pro prospect. And I don't know. I mean, I keep asking this question. Is Stetson Bennett the fourth Drew Brees. Now we talked about it yesterday, a second round draft pick. It wasn't like he was, Tom Brady, 7th round, 199th draft pick. This guy, Drew Brees, was highly coveted coming out of, I guess he played, Joe Tiller was the coach at Purdue at that time. But Stetson Bennett, to me, if I'm an NFL team, and I'm anxious to see if somebody gives this guy a chance, because he's playing in the toughest league in America, and all he does is win. Does that mean enough for the NFL to take a chance on him? I mean, look, I know Kyler Murray is faster and all, but he's about 5'8". Stetson's 5'10".
Yeah, I mean, we've had Jim Nagy on multiple times, and he doesn't want to compare the two quarterbacks, but if you don't have an issue with Bryce Young's size, how can you have an issue with Stetson Bennett's size? I would take a flyer on Stetson Bennett, right? I'm going to go all Brock Purdy, right? More than, an extra defensive lineman or, a wide receiver. Why wouldn't I take a chance on Stetson Bennett, right? He's a winner. He's overcome a bunch of things. He's not going to mind sitting on the bench to begin with. And, I'd go all Brock Purdy on him late in the draft. I'll find the extra players that I need for depth from, practice squads and guys who get cut who didn't make it. But I'm going to take a flyer on Stetson Bennett. It'll be interesting to see if he gets a late invite to the Senior Bowl. So yesterday on the Senior Bowl show with Jim Nagy, they're kind of waiting on Bryce Young, who I don't think is going to come, right? It'd be great if he did, right? The Senior Bowl would sell out. That'd be fantastic. They're waiting to get an agent and Will Levis, right? But they need another quarterback. Well, what happens if Will Levis and Bryce Young say no? Who are you getting? Why don't you go get Stetson Bennett the 4th?
Yeah. And I think that would sell out the Senior Bowl. I mean, I do think it would. Jim Nagy was on with us a couple of weeks ago. And
I don't know if Stetson Bennett would sell at the Senior Bowl. Bryce Young would.
Yeah, no Bryce Young would. But bottom line is, look at who they're taking as NFL quarterbacks now. It's not everybody's going to be 6'4", 6'5", 235 pounds, like a Peyton Manning or Eli Manning.
What they all want.
That's what they all want.
Don't kid yourself, Rob. That's what they all want. I appreciate the prototype, and even Sean Payton is like, can we stop drafting small players? But Anthony Richardson couldn't be consistent from game to game. He wasn't consistent from drive to drive. He wasn't even consistent from play to play. So if you want to roll a first-round draft pick because Anthony Richardson has all these athletic tools, you go ahead. I'm going to take Bryce Young.
Question about Anthony Richardson. He is such a great athlete, but we had one of our guests, Tony Barnhart, on here last week talking about him. But he's not necessarily a great quarterback. But everybody loves him. I mean, he could be a real high draft pick based on his potential. But our friend Jimmy Ott from ESPN 104.5 down in Baton Rouge says potential is Cajun for you ain't done a damn thing yet. So, I mean, we've seen what he can do at 6'4", 240. With that speed and all, where would he play in the NFL if not quarterback, if someone took that chance? Remember Matt Jones, great quarterback from Arkansas out of Fort Smith, 6'7". Jacksonville took him. I think he played tight end or receiver.
That's going to happen. I'm not going to change someone's. Yeah, I'm not changing someone's position. I mean, I'm not looking to do that. But I'm also not going to draft Anthony Richardson in the first round. I'm not going to do it because he's going to sit for at least 3 years, and you're going to have a Jordan Love situation where is he going to be any good to play? Right? I don't think it's going to be an Aaron Rodgers situation because they got rid of Brett Favre, but you're going to have a Jordan Love situation, I think. Or maybe it's going to be some team that needs a quarterback. Again, it's not like I don't want Anthony Richardson to do well. I just haven't seen him do well, although that Florida State game was tremendous. But if you go back to the A&M game, he even struggled in that game. Yeah. He won that football game, but he was good, and then he was bad, and then he was good, and then he was bad. Again, I think it's a big roll of the dice. Whatever Bryce Young has, I don't think Will Levis has. I know Will Levis apparently can throw the ball 80 yards. So that's impressive. But, Rob, we've seen this, right? You can't tell if you look at Bryce Young's face during a game. You can't tell if he's on the first drive or the last drive. You can't tell if it's 0-0 or if he's driving to get in a position to kick the last field goal. All right. And I certainly haven't watched Will Levis as much or Anthony Richardson as much, but his poise in a game is what I want. And I don't think that's something you can teach. I mean, as great as Aaron Rodgers is, whatever Tom Brady has, whatever that it is, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have it. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
As great as quarterback as Aaron Rodgers is, and he's, got a better arm, he's faster, better athlete, whatever Tom Brady has, maybe his teams were better, but whatever it is, he wins and Aaron Rodgers hasn't. Whatever that is. And so I think Bryce Young has it, and I'm not sure those other guys do. We'll see about C.J. Stroud because he hasn't played well against Michigan twice now, although he did ball out against Georgia. I want to ask you something, Rob.
Yeah.
What about the way Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams acted, right? It's New Year's. It's, after midnight. In fact, it's after midnight Eastern time. And Ohio State just lost the toughest game of the season, right? On a game that they kind of blew, right? They should have won that football game. Ryan Day is up there answering questions for 15 minutes. C.J. Stroud is answering questions for 15 minutes. He's like, I know we lost, but boy, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. I'm not happy that we lost, but I'm up here answering questions. Lincoln Riley, answered one, and no Caleb Williams. Do teams look at that and say, things didn't kind of go their way, and they're pouting? So Caleb Williams gets it from Lincoln Riley, and I don't think it looks good for Caleb Williams. Are we going to have an issue, next year where, that's a lack of leadership, right? You're the Heisman Trophy winner. Go up there and answer questions. It's not easy. No one's going to make it personal. They're just going to ask you a couple of questions about the game. But they couldn't even handle that. And I wonder what you think about that.
Well, we're about to go to a break, and but I'll just say this before we go to the break, and I'll give you my answer. I don't think Cam Newton really ever recovered from the way he acted in the locker room after losing in the Super Bowl to the Broncos. You've got to handle that well. I don't like losing, but you got to handle it right. That's what you are expected to do as a leader. We'll talk more right after this quick break.
From Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, second segment here. Rob Browne broadcasting with Dave Schultz, WNSP Sports down in Mobile. The Sultan of the Sunbelt, Q's Nation lifer, and devoted and committed SEC college sports, pro sports junkie. All right, my thoughts about these guys like Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams, Ryan Day. First off, you can't go in there with a pout face, as my wife says, spreading the dreary wearies all over the place. You got to go in there and face the music. And, I remember pivotal moments in different players' careers throughout their, sports career, how they handled defeat. And you got to go in there. It used to be coaches, Coach Jordan, Coach Bryant, they'd go in the opposing team's locker room. I remember Dale Brown one time when I was at Auburn, came into the Auburn locker room after a basketball game to talk to Sonny Smith and Charles Barkley and the team, congratulate them on the win. And you got these players now that a lot of them have been pampered and told you the man since first or second grade, and they don't know how to handle defeat. And it's all about them. And I tell you, the other problem is I don't see enough of them visibly upset on the sidelines. And now you think about it, in the pros, that's not uncommon. But in college now, they're getting paid a lot of money. So I think Lincoln Riley, he doesn't take defense seriously. So I don't know how he's going to win a national championship, because you got to have enough defense. You don't have to be locked down. He doesn't have that. So guys, again, Cam Newton, when he was so upset, I understand it, but you've got to go up there and answer the questions from the media. You've got to quit vilifying the media. They're telling your story, but you got to man up and face the music. When you screw up, the first thing you do is admit it. And after a loss, Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, Ryan Day, and also, you can't stay beat, but you've got to own it and stand up on the podium like a man. That's it.
It's been my experience, Rob, that because these guys are the ones playing, they're the ones who understand, losing is part of it, right? It's not always about winning. Every one of them have lost something somewhere along the way. And I think, when I was it was just minor league baseball, but these guys handle losses much better than I did. And I think for the most part, they handle losses better than the fans, right? Although it affects them much more directly, right? I don't get anything if South Alabama wins. I don't get anything if Alabama wins, right? Most fans don't get anything outside of a hat and a T-shirt that says national championship and maybe some memories, but they don't get a ring. It's not their banner hanging up. And so I've always been around players that seem to handle it better than fans. And now all of a sudden, it doesn't seem like the coaches or the players are handling it as well as they should. Go look what, I can give you a couple of good examples. Nick Saban, after, the Texas game, they won, but he was pissy because they didn't play very well. But I can give you Sean Payton. It was very odd. Sean Payton would be livid when they would win, but not play well, compared to when they just got beat. When they didn't play well and lost, not by a field goal, but like they got, we're not talking like Rams Saints. We're talking, I think Kirk Cousins went in there and beat them in a playoff game. And they just got beat. Like the Vikings were the better team. And he was so complimentary to them and didn't really, they played better than us. They were better than us today. We didn't play very well, but they played extremely well. So it's very odd. Sean Payton it's a very different deal when you think he's going to be mad, he's not. And when you think he's going to be happy, he's not either. So it's very odd. And we don't get those, those coaches like that anymore, where they just, another one is good. You never know what you're going to get is Boeheim, and so Jim Boeheim answers the questions before you ask him. He'll give you a recap. He'll give you a minute and a half recap of the game, and he's answered all the questions without being actually answered a question. So he's good at that too, win or lose. Now he may be a little bit more surly if he wins or if he loses, but he's there every time. Obviously, he's Hall of Fame coach. He's been doing it forever. So maybe that's a little bit different. But, I even saw a high school coach this year. They got further than we thought he was going to get, right? Nobody thought. They started out the season really poorly. Maybe it was the teams that they were playing were really good. And all of a sudden, they found themselves in like the quarterfinals of the high school playoffs, right?
Yeah.
But they're way underdogs, and they're going to get beat, and they did, right? It was a mismatch in the game. And yet, everyone's coming up to him, congratulating him. Great season. Congratulations. Great run. And he was just, really thankful for what they accomplished. Even the players held their heads up and their shoulders were back and they were on the field. It was a road game. So they were just on the field after the game, and it takes me 10, 15 minutes to get down there. So it was good to see that. But, when you see little babies like Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams, acting that way, it's what are you doing, guys? It's all of 15 minutes, and it's going to be the last time you're talking to the media for a month. Yeah. Just do it. Yeah. Just step up.
Yeah, you've got to. But it is symptomatic of just a lot of the stuff that's tolerated. And, and then I go back to, you talk about Will Anderson and Jalen Carter, one tackle between the two of them. And we all know that a great defensive player, great defensive players, lockdown corners, they can effectively take away their side of the field and force the action to the other side. I don't think Will Anderson was out there playing not to get hurt. He played in that game. So did Bryce Young. That was a statement, man. And I felt like Alabama would play the game of their best game of the year against Kansas State. And they did. They won 45-20, probably could have scored a lot more points. And I think you're going to see players. This is where I see us going. You're going to see more players stepping up and doing what Bryce Young and Will Anderson did. You referenced this a minute ago before the break. Jim Nagy, I always like to ask him this because I think he is so he's brilliant. He understands it. He's been in 6 Super Bowls in his 18 years with the Packers, the Patriots, and the Seahawks. He's got 4 Super Bowl rings. Guy's got a great football mind. He's a Michigan man. But you talked about, they look at character. They look at how do you handle defeat? How do you handle it when things go wrong? I've got a friend of mine who was on the staff at Auburn at Pro Day 5 years ago. He goes, this guy, we're out there and all 32 teams are there. And, Kerryon Johnson's on the running backs, and we got Cam Petway. And this guy keeps looking over my shoulder. And I turn around and it's Bill Belichick. He's got his hoodie on. He hadn't shaved, baggy pants, the old white socks with the earth shoe, those black shoes, coach's shoes. And he introduces himself. And, my friend's like I don't know who you are, but he asked him every question imaginable. Okay. How does he handle it when things don't go right? What is this, Kerryon Johnson like, in practice? How does he treat his teammates? Most of all, how does he handle it when things don't go right? When there's something that he may not agree with, but it's for the good of the team. He wants to know everything about the player. And the NFL guys, before they invest a lot of money, and you're right, David, they've got to know everything because there's money on the line. And if you've got character flaws, you throw a hissy fit. Well, you know what? Nobody wants to be around someone with bad karma, do they? That's what matters in the NFL because a lot of crazy stuff's going to happen, and you better be able to handle it.
I'm with you. Yeah, that's the key. It's, everybody can act well when things are going well, but when, things hit a rough patch, right? I mean, as many Super Bowl wins as Tom Brady has, he's had a couple of brutal Super Bowl losses.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. He's never gotten his butt kicked in a Super Bowl. He had two crushing defeats against the Giants and a tough loss where he's thrown for like 500 yards against the Eagles. And yet, anybody remember that he skipped out on what he was supposed to do? I don't think so. So, you're looking for those leadership qualities. Everyone can act well when it's going well. You need to know what it's like when it's not going well. And, can't be surprised that Belichick is doing that. So good for him.
Well, then think about coaches who have been through a lot. I mean, one of my favorites is Andy Reid, coach of the Chiefs. All the personal stuff off the field that he's been through. And we had Pat Dye Jr. on the show a couple of weeks after his father died back in June of 2020. And he said, of all the thousands of texts and phone calls and emails and letters, it's unbelievable. He goes, one that really stuck out was from a coach that he said, I met your father in 1980 when he was at Wyoming for that 1 year. We played him and it was a 56-49 game. He went on and on and on about how hard his team played and everything like that. And just said, he was a great man. I learned a lot from him. And it was Andy Reid talking and wrote that letter. And Andy Reid just, he looks like Wilford Brimley, from the old, Our House or whatever it was, in The Firm. But I love coaches like him. Tom Landry. We talked to Jim Tunney. We get him on the show sometimes. He's a friend of my friend Don Clanton. Jim Tunney's known as the dean of NFL referees. And I've asked him about all the games. I think he refereed over 500 games over the years, a 32-year career. What were some of the coaches? He talked about Tom Landry, Bill Walsh, Chuck Noll, Bud Grant, Lombardi. But he said Tom Landry was always, you think he was this mild-mannered guy in a suit and a hat with a fedora. He was always thinking 3 or 4 plays ahead. Another coach who's just like that? The head ball coach. Don't call him the old ball coach, Buddy Martin, and those guys. Don't do that. He'll put you in a headlock. But Steve Spurrier, they're thinking ahead like that. But I'm with you. You get a chance to be around these coaches. They got to be able to handle it and act like a grown-up in front of the media. Because if they don't, their players feed off of that.
Right.
I think you've got that with Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams. Caleb, congratulations on the Heisman. Okay. Now you're going to be getting a check for a living, and you're going to have to face the music in a defeat. You want to win, but if you lose, it's your fault.
Here, yeah, I think the day is coming here, Rob, where you're going to get, so the PGA, for those who don't know, when the PGA does it, generally speaking, and there's a press conference, you get somebody from the PGA Tour to ask the questions, and then the media asks the questions. So somebody who's representing the PGA Tour starts it off, and then the media gets a chance. I think that's going to end. I think that's the way that these teams are going to go. We're going to put out our own content the way it is, right? Rob, you don't work for a radio station. You're doing your own thing, right? You don't need radio anymore in the way you can do your show, right? Just the way technology is, you're doing your own thing with what's available to you. You don't need to be on the radio, and you probably have a wider reach than my show, which is on the radio every day. So I think you're going to get to the point where these teams are like, you know what? We don't need the media. We're going to do 15 minutes with these players. We're going to ask them softball questions, and then we're going to post it. And then the media can fend for themselves somewhere else. I don't think we're that far away from that's what we're coming. But remember, the media is not out to get the players. I mean, some are, and in some cases well-deserved. But for the most part, the media has been a conduit from the public to the team. Well, what we have now, we don't really need that anymore, because the team can have, 4 or 5 players, ask them all questions, and then post it right after the game, right? And then the fans can see what the player said. Can skip right past the media. I don't think we're that far away from that happening. I really don't. We'll see who is the first to do that, the NFL or the NBA or Major League Baseball or hockey or soccer or golf. But somewhere along the way, the media is going to get cut off because they don't need the middleman anymore.
Well, the bottom line is I love radio.
By the way, Rob, another good hair day, just to let you know.
There you go. Hey, I love radio, terrestrial radio. And I've been, and we have we have the web, and we're also on radio now. And I'm with you on both. But bottom line is, you've got, just like in our job, we're all fans of particular schools. But when you're on the air, you got to be fair. I know that's cliche-ish and a rhyme, but I look at it objectively, and I'm probably harder on my school than I am on any other school, including Auburn's biggest rivals. But I got to say, you make so many great points about how you handle yourself in front of the media. And the media is not your enemy. Now, there are some people out there that are, and I'm not going to name them, but they can't get in, they can't find something negative fast enough to say about a particular school or coach. I mean, Bruce Pearl's been attacked for so many things, but when you break it down, what did he really do? That doesn't really matter. Because if it doesn't fit the narrative people want to push, you pick the coach at the school. That's how it goes. But man, Dave, this has been a great discussion. We ran out of time, and love always having you on. You're one of the most popular people we have on. They're like, let Schultz, let him go, man. Let him roll, because when you get to talking the Sultan of the Sunbelt, Q's Nation and all, it's awesome. And look, we're ready to next week after the championship game. We're going to put the pedal to the metal with college basketball. And I know you've got a great basketball mind, but tell people how they can follow you in Mobile. Honk when you go through the tunnel and say Schultz cast, but let them know how they can follow you, and we'll do this again next week.
Well, we actually had a little bit of combination there on the Senior Bowl show yesterday with Jim Nagy. We had Mobile native Carlton Marshall. He got a Senior Bowl invite, and the all-time NCAA leading tackler. And we had Matthew Orgeron, the offensive tackle from Syracuse. So we had a little Syracuse, and we had a little Sunbelt action. So you can follow me at SchultzCast on Twitter, and you can find a Locked On Sunbelt wherever you find your podcast and YouTube. So
hey, look,
it's starting to grow. I'm learning about this social media. I'm taking all kinds of lessons from Rob Browne, and I'll show him how to get the good hair going, and he'll tell me about social media and spreading the word on the show.
All right, I'm coming to the Senior Bowl, and we're going to go eat some oysters out there at Wenzel's or whatever. I'm just ready to get down there to the Senior Bowl.
That's right. We got 3.5 weeks there, Hotshot. You told me you're coming.
Hey, Audrey's. You know why Audrey's coming more than anything? The Reese's Pieces. She loves them. That's her favorite candy.
There you go.
Hey, have a great one. Thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
You too, Rob. Happy New Year.
All right, Happy New Year to you. All right, let's switch gears. Let's head to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. They know a thing or two about winning championships, and we've got about a minute before the break. Gary Harris, Tide 100.9, WVUA TV, Channel 23. Check out that great show Tuesday nights at 6:30 with Rodney Orr. We'll be getting him back on here soon with some technical issues so we can do StreamYard. Channel 23, Tuesday nights at 6:30, all about Alabama. Gary, listen, I don't even want to get started. We're going to go to the break here in just a few seconds.
I'll move inside.
But I'm going to tell you what. We've been talking with Dave Schultz about the way a lot of these coaches and players, Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams, handled themselves in defeat with the media. And they didn't really do a good job. And I think you got to go stand up. You are in the media. You are one of the best guys out there. And we're going to talk about your thoughts on what it is like to interview players with a pout face, spreading the dreary wearies all over the place in defeat. Man up, ladies and gentlemen. Man up. Face the music. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, my name is David Wisdom.
And I'm Shelby McNeil, and we're attorneys with Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short, your local Auburn law firm. Established in 1959 right in the heart of Auburn, Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short has grown in response to our clients' legal needs. We're a full-service law firm focusing on the legal issues our clients face.
We take pride in providing our clients with exceptional legal services, ongoing communication, and skilled representation. If you have any questions about our services, please give us a call or visit our website today.
All right, back with Gary Harris in Tuscaloosa. Gary, let's get started. That Alabama-Kansas State game, call it a statement or whatever, but Bryce Young, Will Anderson playing, talk about Will Anderson didn't light up the stat sheet, any tackles, but they played in that game, and I think that lit a fire under the rest of the Alabama players that, look, we've been through a lot together. We're going to finish together. Both of those guys are going to go on, I hope, have great pro careers. But I'm glad they played. You can't worry about getting hurt. Again, you can get hurt walking into your office right now. You could trip on the curb and knock your front teeth out and have to get, a set of wooden teeth on aisle 7 next to glass eyeballs. I mean, you don't want that to happen. But I'm so glad that they played. And I believe it's going to set a trend going forward. Guys are going to start going, you know what? I am part of a team. And there are things in life bigger than just me and looking in the mirror and thinking about myself all the time. Would you agree? And also, after that, your thoughts about players that show up or don't show up, or coaches and act like little babies after they get beat?
Yeah, Rob. All right, let's start with Bryce and Will and the other players at Alabama playing in the game. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I thought Coach Saban said it before the game. I was in New Orleans from Wednesday until Saturday evening when we drove back, after the game. But I think you add value. I think that, we're talking about how unusual it is to opt in now, but this opting out is still relatively a new phenomenon. I mean, it was, 10 years ago, nobody opted out. I mean, it didn't matter if you were in the BCS championship game at the time, or if you were in a bowl game or whatever. If there was a game to be played, you played it with your team. And then in the last few years, with everything, the landscape changing as much as it has, I think we've seen the trend be, there's nothing left to play for here. I got to get ready for the draft, man. I got to take care of me. I got people in my ear telling me I could get hurt and this could happen and that could happen. And I think by those guys playing and all the other Alabama players that opted in, the only players that didn't play were those that went in the portal, but everybody that was still on the team and not in the portal and was available to play, played in the game. And they went out and they had a marvelous game and, got to celebrate with their teammates. So I think the message is, Rob, that there is something to play for. You sign with these teams, you invest in the program, you hopefully get a degree, and finishing things out is important, and you're still part of that program. And I hope that message was sent loud and clear, and that next year you have more players that follow the lead and say, we want to play. I mean, you look at Tillman and Hyatt with Tennessee, and Tennessee played great and beat Clemson.
Dominated.
And didn't need those guys. But, they had to be thinking during that game, I wish I was out there, man. I wish I was. That's my team. And I'm not even playing. And I think Bryce and Will recognized that prior to the fact. And they just simply said, we're Alabama football players. This program is important to us. The coaching staff, my teammates, they're all important to me, and I want to play in the game. And then, of course, Bryce had a phenomenal game. And I think, with him in the discussion for the number 1 overall pick, I think that adds value. I mean, let me put it this way. I'm not. But if I were a front office person in the NFL or a GM or somebody that had the power to have clout in the draft room, and I'm evaluating 2 players, and everything's pretty much the same, and one guy played in this bowl game and one guy didn't, I'm turning to my people in that room. I said, let's kick the guy that played in the bowl game, man. I mean, obviously football and being part of a team and we first instead of me first is important to that guy. So I hope that is something that those guys did that will start a trend. And next year you'll have more players that say, no, I don't want to opt out. I want to play football because I'm a football player and I want to see it through with my team. As far as handling losses, I try. I understand, and you do too. If you've ever been a competitor, that it hurts to lose. And the way that USC lost was painstaking. I mean, that was as tough as it gets. But being that is part of your responsibility, especially as the head coach. I mean, Lincoln Riley has paid, millions of dollars. We're talking millions and millions of dollars to be the head coach and represent that program. And you got to be willing to do it. And that's one thing I'll say about Coach Saban, for all the flack he takes in regards to how he handles the media. When it comes to getting in front of the reporters after a loss, he's a stand-up guy, Rob. I've always said, in fact, he's actually easier to deal with after a loss. Because I think that, he understands that that's not the time to rant and rave. You rant and rave when you win, because when you lose, you just want the players to be allowed to kind of, soak it in a little bit. And that's not the time to, when he comes in front of the reporters after a loss, he handles himself very, very well. So I think even though it stings and even though it hurts, that's part of the responsibility of being a college football player or being a college football head coach, is that the media responsibilities after the game, particularly in a bowl game, you have to fulfill those and you have to try to do your best to handle it appropriately.
Yeah. And I think it's a problem when you don't tell people to man up. You're afraid you might hurt their feelings. Who cares? I don't care. I'll tell you right now, you screw up, you get pulled over by the police for speeding. You know what I say? Yes, sir, I was speeding. I have no excuse. That's what I say always. They don't want to hear that. And that's what we've got a problem with. A lot of these young coaches, I mean, they're part of the entitlement generation that thinks they were born on third base. They were born on third base and think they hit a triple. It's annoying. You get beat, you go in the locker room, you face the media, and you don't talk down to people. Treat people like you want to be treated. And I do think, again, you go back to when Nick Saban took over at LSU in 2000, first team meeting he had with the players, every man in that room raised his hand. Their number one goal was, guess what? Going to the Sugar Bowl. And he talked about, now we have players that quit. I don't use the term opt out. I'm not that soft. They're quitting. They are not, okay, are you present or not? It's, and the thing is, you think about what these guys put in to the program here.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What these coaches and these players, you work together. I'm going to be interested in the coming years when they have the 10, 20, and 30 and 40 year reunions. People are going to remember you left like before the bowl game. Gary, I just got a text. The tickets to the Sugar Bowl they didn't give them away, did they, this year? They were not free they were not free for everybody, for 75,000 people, were they?
No, they weren't free.
Yeah. And hotel rooms in New Orleans were not free, were they? The cost of going out to the restaurants, air travel. So if you're a coach, if you want to endear yourself to your fan base, you need to come out there and say, hey, listen, I would love to see a coach do this. Say, I want to say this to our fans who are sacrificing so much to travel with us to the semifinal game or this bowl game or the championship game, whatever. We are committed to winning. We know you are sacrificing with the cost of gas, air travel, hotels, food, being away from work. Sometimes you're away from your family. We know what the media people do. We want you to know we're taking this game seriously, because for the most part, it's almost like they don't care. They go to the bowl game and you got these players over there laughing on the sidelines. Lou Holtz, when he took over at Notre Dame, 1986, his first year, he went in the locker room and he looked around after a loss and he just didn't see a lot of players that were visibly upset. But he found one over in the corner who was openly sobbing, who had smashed in his locker. And it was Chris Zorich, who grew up in Chicago lifting manhole covers to lift weights. He grew up pretty tough circumstances. He goes, that's the guy that I will build a national championship team around. It better matter to you, and you've got to let your fans know. I listen to some of these people that call in some of these shows. I honestly think they're in the nervous hospital and they get phone privileges. And I'm not sure if Nurse Cratchit gets their meds to them in time or not, but put things in perspective. These games matter, and you're representing the brand of that university you're a part of. And these players that walk off the job and the team gets beat, I'm not saying they're not welcome, but you sign a scholarship on the front end. It should say you will play in every game and while you're a student and on scholarship.
Well, I agree. I mean, I think you want to see it through to fruition with your team. And I understand that, guys want to make it to the next level. But again, I go back to what Coach Saban says. You add value by playing football. Players add value by playing football and playing well and being part of that team all the way through. And I think we saw that with Alabama, and I hope we'll see it with more teams, and that, it doesn't become just, if we're not in the playoff, we're not playing. Now, expanding the playoff, I think we'll fix a lot of that, because we're going to have more teams in the playoff, and that'll be less opt-outs. But then if you're not in the playoff, there'll be even less, I think, of a feeling of importance in these bowl games. So I don't know what we're going to do, but it's an individual situation and decision that these players have to make. But I think that it does. And I said this last week when I was in New Orleans. I do think that for Alabama, it's perception has become reality. It's terrific for perception that when you come to Alabama, it's important to finish the drill, and that it's different when you play at Alabama. And again, I made this point over and over. You had teams that were not in the in playoff contention and have never even been in the playoff, and they've got guys that were opting out. And you got Alabama. This is only the second time that they haven't been in the playoff, and their guys were playing. Yeah. So I'm with you. I'd like to see that trend become the norm again, where guys just say, you know what, I want to focus on the draft once my season is over with my team, and that'll be after the bowl game.
Yeah. And how do you get better as a football player, Gary? By playing football.
Yeah, absolutely.
So missing a game and missing those extra 20 practices, I mean, that I don't think that helps. And I definitely believe NFL coaches, scouts, player personnel directors, the front office people, they definitely look at that. Gary, Alabama's got a pretty good basketball team. Nate Oates, he's got some serious talent. Does he have the best freshman in America? Does he have this year's Jabari Smith? I mean, let's talk about the Crimson Tide on the hardwood.
Yeah, I think Brandon Miller's special. There's no doubt about it. And Coach Oates said after the Ole Miss game on Tuesday night, let's enjoy him for this 1 year that we have him. So there's no problem here with the fact that they know he's going to be going into the draft after this season. But yeah, he's really good, Rob. And the thing I like about him the most is certainly he can score. I mean, he's the leading freshman scorer in the country. But even when he doesn't score, he can help your team. And we've seen that a couple of times when he's had low-scoring games. But the other night, I mean, he had 17 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. Our 3 assists and 2 steals and a block. He'll fill up the stat sheet in other ways, but it's not just about him. I was on another show yesterday, and someone asked me about do I believe the freshmen are the heart of the team, and I said, yeah, absolutely. This is a freshman-led team, and it's not just him, but it's it's Clowney and Bradley and these other guys, and they're young, they're talented, they're hungry, they've bought in, and then those veterans have bought in around them. You don't see issues with guys worrying about how many minutes they're getting. They're a deep team. They had 9 guys score the other night. That's kind of common for them. Rylan Griffin's another freshman that's really starting to step up. So the thing I like about this team, Rob, is they're good now, but I think they're just going to get better and better because they are so young. And the team that we saw in late November, is not as good as the team we saw in December. And the team in December, I don't think is as good as the team we're going to watch here in January. And I think so forth and so on. And I think by March, and hopefully for Alabama by April, you'll see the best version of this team, because when you have so many freshmen that are playing, and they're just going to keep getting better and better. So yeah, I think this is this team has the chance to be special. I think you and I've discussed this. There's a Final Four, but there are more than 4 teams that are good enough to go. Only 4 can go. It's kind of like the playoff now. You got teams that are saying in football, we're good enough to be in there. And when they expand it, they'll get their opportunity. But there's only 4 teams that can make it to the Final Four, but you can have a Final Four caliber team and not make it. I thought a couple years ago, Alabama with Herb Jones and Petty and that bunch, they were a Final Four caliber team, but they didn't make it. So I think this team has the chance to be a Final Four caliber team. And once you get in that tournament, you still need some luck. You need to play well. You might have to hit a shot, with 3 seconds to go, all those types of things. But I do think this team has a chance to do something really, really special. And I think right now, Alabama and Tennessee in the league, Arkansas is good. We know that. There's some other really good teams. Missouri's playing well. LSU surprising some people. Still think Auburn's got a good team. You never count out Kentucky, but I think right now, very early in the season, I see Alabama and Tennessee, and then everybody else trying to kind of catch them.
Yeah, I agree. Real quick before we go to the break, last year Alabama had a lot of success early on, and not so much down the stretch. We talked about it. You just said it. They're getting better and better and better. Any other thing that stands out, or things that stand out about this team versus last year? Yeah,
I think that this year's team, like I said, I think everybody's bought in to play for the team. I think last year, and again, I'm not, players are looking at not only their team, but their individual opportunities. But I thought last year that team had some guys that were not as bought into doing what was best for the team, but looking at it strictly from their perspective and what do I need to do to benefit me? Yeah. And you can be a productive player and view it that way. But at the same time, I think you got a much better chance to be successful if everybody says, we want to do what's best for the team, coach. I'm not worried about how many points I score. I'm not worried about how many minutes I play, because I think in this day and age, that's not always the norm. But I think this team has that. I think they're enjoying playing with each other. I think they're enjoying the results that they're getting. And I think every game, they know that it can be somebody different. Even as talented as Brandon Miller is, he's not going to lead this team in scoring every game. So, yeah, I think there's a big difference between this team and last year's team, just in terms of the focus, the buy-in, and what they're trying to get done and why they're trying to do it the way that they're doing it. Yeah, and you look around at the SEC last year, I remember some of the coaches were saying it was a great year, historically great year, but it wasn't, the team for the second year in a row that went the furthest of anybody was Arkansas, getting to the Elite Eight. Right. And I just looking at this league, we're gonna go to a break. If you can come back, if you can, for a couple of minutes. I gotta go, Rob. I gotta get ready for my show. Tell people how they can follow you. Yeah, at Gary Harris _WVUA on Twitter. The website for the radio station, Tide109.com. You can listen to us on the live stream, or you can download the app. And on TV, it's WVUA23.com, WVUA23. Thank you so much, Rob. Hey, you bet, Gary Harris. Always love having you on the show. We'll do it again next week. Let's take a quick commercial break. Be back for hour number 2 with the AD Angle. Matt Dean, John Hartwell next.
And Done, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you. About to go into hour number 2 on Thursdays, college football and basketball blitz. Great stuff with Gary Harris, as always, down in Tuscaloosa on Alabama football, basketball. We're transitioning, folks, into basketball, and we will be covering college basketball intensely as we do. You saw it last year. We have some great coaches and analysts that and most of the guys that cover these schools. The beat writers. We love having them on here. And I tell you, last year, the claims about the SEC being historically a great year, they just didn't pan out, not as the season went on. And when Kentucky was taken down by St. Peter's in that game, that did not surprise me. I mean, forget the fact Kentucky had a lot of talent on last year's team. And again, Matt Dean is on with us right now from over at Rhodes College. 31 years, athletic director, administrator, 16 years as a women's basketball coach. Matt, Coach Dean, it's in your blood. Tyler's on the staff as a coach out at Oregon with Dan Lanning. But last year when St. Peter's took down Kentucky on Thursday night, the thing that got me, besides the fact, they beat Kentucky, was I didn't see but a couple of players on Kentucky's roster, whether they were on the floor or on the bench, that looked visibly upset after a loss. I'm going to tell you something. If I'm your coach, you better be madder than, anything. If you are okay with losing, it's going to become habitual. So as a basketball coach, as a basketball guy, and John Hartwell will join us in just a second. John played basketball at the Citadel, in addition to the academic and disciplinary rigors of an institution like the Citadel over in Charleston, South Carolina. What would you say about the one and dones? What are they doing to college basketball in terms of trying to build a team culture as a coach and staff?
I think it's very difficult. When we talked about this a few weeks ago, Rob, I think it was, a novel idea at first, and some teams had success with it. But like you go even to that St. Peter's game last year, they were playing against a bunch of 22 and 23-year-olds.
Yeah.
And John will tell you, as a former Division I college basketball player, when you're a freshman playing against 22 and 23-year-olds, I don't care how good you are coming out of high school. They got more reps. They got more weight room time. They got more court experience time. They understand the system better. I mean, they're practicing for 4 more years. They're playing for 4 more years. So I'll be honest with you guys, that game didn't shock me. What shocked me was Kentucky led that game, if I remember, pretty much 6-8 the whole game. And down the stretch, they didn't really have their composure, and it got, I believe, to overtime. And once it got to overtime, anyone can win the game in overtime.
Yeah.
The old road has switched, right? Once momentum leaves you, it's hard to get it back. But, getting back to I think those kids care, but they're truly not as invested as a 3rd or 4th year player, because they know that, hey, I'm going to be projected to be the pick, and they have different ambitions than someone that's a good college basketball player that may not be a good pro.
Yeah. If I'm a coach, and John Hartwell is on here with us right now, down in either 30A or El Dorado, whatever you call it, a town of about 23,000, southern Arkansas near the Louisiana line, home of Murphy Oil, the Murphy Promise. I got to say this. If I'm a coach, my first meeting I have with the team, I'm going to talk about the two kinds of people you have on a team and in a company or in any organization. You have those who are investors in the program. They're invested in it. And you're going to have the people that are the takers. They're just taking, but they're not putting anything back into it. And John, you were offered an opportunity to walk on in basketball at Auburn when Sonny Smith was coaching. You chose to go to the Citadel because you wanted the party life and, to go have fun. And so, yeah, I'm being serious. But you'd been to UMS in Mobile. It stands for University Military School. So when you got to the Citadel and you're going through that first 36 hours of, transformation, and then you're playing basketball, and academically you studied finance and accounting. I mean, wow. You're 18 years old. You're a big guy, but the seniors on the team, and when you played other teams in your league, like Matt said, that are 22 and 23, and you're 18, there was a monumental difference there, wasn't there?
Yeah, definitely. So, guys, good morning. And, when I came on the show, I caught about half of what Matt said. I know y'all were talking about St. Peter's in Kentucky.
Yeah.
I thought for a second there when I first heard, you were talking about 18-year-olds compared to 23 or 24-year-olds. I thought you were talking about Rob's favorite music groups. I thought you were talking about Boys to Men. But now that I know that we're talking about basketball, it's definitely a difference. And, I'll speak to where I just came from recently, state of Utah. And you have a lot of LDS, Latter-day Saints, folks of the Mormon faith. And, that's one of the advantages that people have long talked about BYU. And there's other schools that have LDS kids on it. But there's a lot of difference between an 18-year-old freshman and a 20-year-old freshman. And that same difference carries on to a 22-year-old senior versus a 24-year-old senior. So, yeah, experience matters, having been through the wars before, and chemistry. We've talked about that before. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you've got, a divisive locker room, normally chemistry with talented kids is going to overcome lack of chemistry with unbelievable talent.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. And you look at a kid that comes in one and done. Basically, he's going to be there that first semester and take the necessary class load. And then January comes around, and it doesn't matter whether he goes to class or not. I mean, it's going to be like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Jefferson, the big football player, he goes, "What's he doing here? I thought he just flew in on Fridays for the games." You got to think about that. They don't know each other's tendencies. And both of y'all know this. Matt, as a coach, you've got players that are on the court that become like coaches, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. My better teams, my players in the locker room would always say, "Hey, coach, I want to add something," and try to get the team ready to play. Same thing in the huddle and a play. We may call a play, and a captain may say, "Hey, coach, what about this option?" And going back a little bit to that St. Pete game, what's tough for the Kentucky fan base was that's a team that a lot of people thought had Final Four aspirations. And you look at how far St. Pete traveled in that tournament. I believe, John, they were Elite Eight. I could be wrong. They had a magical run themselves. So we didn't give St. Peter's enough credit, but that's the one sport. You don't see that happen hardly ever in football, where you have a Cinderella line up against a Georgia, and the line of scrimmage just prevents a lot of that from happening. But in basketball, the beauty of March Madness is we go back when I was in high school watching Jimmy V's team beat Phi Slamma Jamma. I mean, they did a documentary I was watching the other day, from Guy Lewis and that team and that he had built. Some of the most incredible college basketball players should be great pros as well. But that one night, man, no doubt that they were a large favorite. But I mean, they shocked the world, and that's the beauty of college basketball. That's why March Madness is still the king, in my opinion. College football playoff is starting to, make waves, and I know we're going to expansion and those type of things, but March Madness, because you can have an underdog make a deep, deep run.
Yeah, you can. And Chuck Oliver, our friend over in Atlanta, Southern Sports Today, made a comment one time back in the fall with one of his guests talking about playing against Brigham Young. It was Arkansas was getting ready to play BYU, or they were going to play him in a few weeks. And Arkansas went out there and got a win, which was impressive. So there's a big difference between being an 18 and 19-year-old lineman going up banging heads against 23 and 24-year-olds, especially one that's been riding a mountain bike around Australia or something on a mission for 2 years, getting a lot of doors slammed in his face. That's great sales training, my friend. Boy, how do you handle rejection? Well, I was on a 2-year mission. But, John, you know this from being out in Utah, the land of Jim Swarthout from the great movie Fletch, the realtor. The whole deal, like, guys would come in for 2 years, freshman, sophomore, gone for 2 years on the mission, then they come back. I bet you that's tough as a coach, but I'm sure it's factored in to the equation. And it's just, that's the culture they are. And they're probably so used to it, because I first started following BYU when Lavelle Edwards was the coach in 1979. I think they were 11-0 in the regular season, as was Florida State when they had the dual quarterbacks of Wally Woodham and Jimmy Jordan. The last time I can remember dual quarterbacks being that effective. Of course, Oklahoma trounced them in the Orange Bowl. But is that a big deal? I'm sure at Utah State, in your 8 years there as the athletic director, you had some Mormons on the teams there. Would they leave, or is that just a BYU, the mothership, does that?
No, it certainly occurred at Utah State and the University of Utah, and scattered other programs too. And the one thing that changed about 9-10 years ago, just prior to me getting to Logan, was they changed. It used to be you had to be 20 years old to go on a mission. They changed it to 18. So in most cases now, which makes it sometimes even harder to project, is you are offering scholarships to kids that are 3 years out probably from ever even stepping foot on your campus to play. So you've got to really be good at projection, and a lot of times it works out, sometimes it does not. But that does make it a little bit easier, because the trying to project into the future, when kids came and played for 2 years and then they left for 2 years and then came back and played, was probably even harder at that point.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to switch gears now. I'm going to go to Matt and then come back to you. Matt, your son's on the staff at Oregon. This year, the Pac-12 had 5 teams win 10 or more games. UCLA won 9 in year 4 under Chip Kelly. Unfortunately, Southern Cal and UCLA are going to go to the Big Ten. Again, to both of y'all as ADs, and think about the Wednesday or Thursday night volleyball game, Southern Cal at Rutgers with a snowstorm coming in. I mean, are they going to start carpooling from the West Coast, Southern Cal and UCLA? I bet there may be some fights on the plane, but something's going to happen. But I got to ask you this, Matt. I think they're very serious about winning out in the Pacific Northwest. In Oregon, they may have 15 or 20% of their roster made up of in-state players. Talk about the significance of having a direct flight from Eugene to DFW. I mean, they may be out on the other end of the country, but they recruit right in your backyard, don't they?
They do, and they signed 6 4-stars from the state of Texas this year. So that proves what you just talked about is correct. I mean, so I'm just telling you, they're ended up with the top 10 class, including a late quarterback flip from Baylor, Austin Novosad, who's a really good player. He was actually at a camp recently that rated higher than Dante Moore, who they lost to UCLA. And obviously, I'm a little biased here because my son works there, but they hit the ground there basically the first week of January, and they accomplished 10 wins. They beat UCLA and Utah this year. I mean, I was at the UCLA game. They had them down 45-23 with 5 minutes to play. I think they're coming, because I think what Dan's trying to do is build a culture based a little bit more on defense. If you look at some of Oregon's success in the past, it's it's been these glorified offenses. And we know the Chip Kellys, Marcus Mariota, Justin Herbert, fantastic quarterback play. But right now, I think Dan's trying to build a defense, and they're trying to, turn the roster a little bit in terms of that direction. I'm really intrigued. I think in 2 or 3 years, we're going to be talking about a team that's, I'm not saying like a complete SEC roster, but they're going to model some of the SEC rosters because they're going to go in the South and recruit.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I remember back their 2010 team that played Auburn for the national championship. Darren Thomas, the quarterback, was from the Houston area, which is a big area. But also DJ James, the running back, was from Texarkana on the Texas side. Of course, part of it's on the Arkansas side. You know what's famous, though, about Texarkana that only a guy like John Hartwell, who lives in El Dorado, Arkansas, would know? That is the home of the Falk Monster. Remember that great 70s homemade film, The Legend of Boggy Creek? John, if you ever hear a sound at night, or just a horrible sound, that's the Falk Monster. But, John, asking you, you've been in Utah these last 8 years. Those people out there want to win, and let's be honest, which we always are, nothing means more to them than to beat an SEC team. So I would think, firsthand, they're ramping up. And look at Kyle Do you know Kyle Whittingham, the coach at Utah? I heard he's a black diamond skier, serious athlete and competitor, but he doesn't look like he wants to go anywhere but back to his office and get ready for the next game.
Yeah, he's extremely intense. He is an outstanding skier, and you don't want to play him on a golf course either because he's about a 4 or 5 handicap, and he will sandbag you in a heartbeat. But yeah, you make a great point. And here's the thing, and obviously long before I ever had any inkling about living in the state of Utah, I can remember back in the Sugar Bowl when Utah beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, and people still point to that day as maybe the turning point for Utah football. And they've continued, to progress from there. Obviously, BYU has had some great teams going back to the Steve Young, Jim McMahon days, Ty Detmer. So there is a history of success, but you make a great point wanting to take it because they're always going to be measured against the SEC. When you're talking about college football, they're going to be measured against the SEC. And, I'd be interested from Matt on his son's team out in Eugene. I know, Rob, you said 15, 20%. It may not even be that high in terms of the number of kids that are in-state Oregon kids. And no knock on high school football in Oregon, but you look at both the population and the competition as factors in that. And I would venture to say whether you pick Shelby County or Mobile County or certainly, Fulton County or Metro, DFW or Houston, you're going to have more Division I signees out of an individual community or county in all of those I just named than you will out of the entire state of Oregon.
Hold that thought, John. Hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break because I always talk about Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County, Florida. 100 plus D1 players every year. It's incredible. More after this.
From Hewlett and Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
John Hartwell, you were making a great point about that Houston area, Dallas, Fort Worth, the number of players. I referenced the Dade, Palm Beach, Broward counties. There's so much talent there. And by the way, got a text yesterday from one of our listeners down in Fort Lauderdale, Yule Gibbons. And Yule said Miami is about to invest $100 million into a football-only facility. That's that's incredible. I mean, and because they've been notoriously, cheaper and tighter than Mr. Krabs, owner of the Crab, the Krusty Krab restaurant. I mean, they've never spent money on facilities. They've also got that trial lawyer down there, Luis Rujas or whatever, billionaire plus. That's significant, guys. But I got to ask you this on a facility side. Whoever wants to take this on, do it. But how much do you invest? People are starting to say, these players have NIL. As long as this is going on, what is this doing? Okay, how much do you need to invest in facilities? And also, what's this doing to the regular fundraising, whether it's Tigers Unlimited at Auburn, Tide Pride at Alabama, the Loyalty Foundation at Ole Miss? John, you know about this. Either one of y'all. How much is that being hurt by people having to give their money to these NIL collectives?
Yeah, I think the priority today, if you talk to most coaches, is NIL, because it is so new and it is such an arms race in terms of that. Just like 5 years ago, the arms race in facilities. And that's not to say that facilities are going to go away. We talk about the University of Oregon and the waterfalls and the barbershop and all that stuff they've got in the football facility. Yeah. And it helps when you've got a guy named Mr. Knight stroking the checks there too, and providing uniforms. But I think you're going to see the pendulum shift back some, because you're going to have the elite, if you will, for lack of a better term. You're probably going to have 25 or 30 programs that kind of survive this onslaught. Obviously, everybody will survive in some form, but I think you're going to see 25 to 30 programs kind of separate themselves even further. And, your listeners may say, well, gosh, what about there's 65 in the Power Five right now? I think that number is going to change some. They may be Power Five in title, but in terms of the true people that can compete for a national championship, which, by the way, I would be remiss if I didn't say hats off to TCU, a 12,000 enrollment private institution who is playing for a national championship. I think outside of the UGA fans and the folks in the state of Georgia, I think the vast majority of the people are going to be pulling for the Purple Horned Frogs on Monday night in that game. And again, hats off to Sonny Dykes and what that program has done. But I back to the question, I think you're going to see 25 to 30 schools who can manage high-level NIL. They've got enough donors. They've got enough wealth who can manage that and continue to build facilities. But I do think you're going to see, the cataclysmic climb of facilities slow down some in this new time of NIL.
Yeah. Matt Dean, Tyler, your son's on the staff at Oregon. We talked about that. I mean, it's like, Wally World out there. There's just how much is enough, and can you get it to where your players, it's too nice and too easy, and you become like a snowplow parent that just pushes every obstacle out of your kid's way, kind of just pushes them along through life, and then all of a sudden they're out on their own. They're married with a family and kids and bills to pay, and they don't know what to do. I'm serious about that. I think we're starting to see we can make it too easy.
Well, I will tell you this. My son has been at Texas A&M and then now at Oregon. And as nice as Oregon is, it is tremendous. I just got to tell you, Texas A&M, they're building a lot down there. They have a new indoor coming, and as nice as the building is at Eugene, Oregon, the one in College Station is significantly nicer, and that's how nice these facilities are. But John made an interesting point I agree 100% with. We're going to get to the point where we're going to have about 25 to 30, whatever the number is, of these major programs that are going to remain standing. And my question's always going to has been like John's right, the rest are going to survive, but at what level? And that, how is that going to affect giving if you're in that school that's just right below there? How does that affect giving? Because there's even though maybe not is always realistic, there are a lot of boosters out there that want to think that their giving can lead to the ultimate success. And if they realize that maybe we're not invited to the party, how much of a difference, John, does that make? And I think we're in a real interesting time. And Rob, we've had these conversations about NIL and the portal.
Yeah.
Well, you know who handled the portal the best this year? TCU. And who's playing for the national championship is TCU. So whether you like the portal or not, we've said this, you have to know how to manage it. And unfortunately, the emphasis is no longer recruiting these high school juniors and seniors. It's how you manage the portal.
Yeah. John answered that. That's a good question.
Yeah. Since you've taken the liberty, Rob, to talk about fast times at Ridgemont High, all of those things, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the bubbling up crude reference of the Beverly Hillbillies when you talk about A&M and their facilities, and you talk about TCU. The oil and gas money doesn't hurt either. So I just want to keep us on task there as we're making some reference to 70s, 80s, 90s information there. But
film genre.
Yeah, absolutely. But Matt, you are spot on there. I just think, at some point, the price of playing poker is going to get too high for some of the people at the table, and they're going to either have to fold their hands or go find a smaller limit table to play at. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I think it'll probably take 3 to 5 years to play out. But the transfer portal and NIL, as we've talked about so often, has changed the game. But, two points I want to talk about briefly, if we can over the next little bit. And one, when you look at Bobby Petrino, speaking of Texas A&M, it's hard to get upset with kids who are bouncing from school to school when you have coaches who are bouncing from school to school. Bobby goes for a cup of coffee to Vegas. He may not have had time to even sit down at a poker table while he was there. But, I think it was 18 or 20 days where he was officially on the payroll at UNLV. He gets called by Jimbo Fisher, and he's the new offensive coordinator in College Station. So how can we get upset at kids who are going school to school when you have coaches doing the same thing? And if you say it's for anything but money, you're flat out kidding yourself.
Yeah. Well, I got to ask you this. In the military, there's a chain of command. You're an 18-year-old, E1, E2, whatever. Then you got a major general or platoon leader. They can do things, but they better not abuse it. They better have that take care of your men first mentality. But when I was in college, I didn't tell my dad where we were going on vacation. I didn't tell it. I mean, I'm not, my dad's 94. I'm still scared of my parents. Their mom's 88, 89, especially after dark. She starts drinking jet fuel. But I'm just saying, I know coaches, but they're adults. And I'm not saying the kids, it doesn't matter, but there ought to be at least to go into the portal that the lesson is you're trying to teach the lessons of life. Tommy Tuberville was on the show back about 6 months ago talking about every day. He's a U.S. senator now from the great state of Alabama. He gets calls from coaching friends of his from across the country because he was in coaching 41 years, college coaching. He said, they're not happy with all this NIL and this portal. It's hard to build anything. You go tough on a kid in practice and make him do a bunch of hill repeats or star jacks, up and down the field. You may be watching ESPN that night and see his name run across the crawl in the portal. And it shouldn't be that way. First off, you shouldn't recruit soft kids. I recommend that. But guys, if you transfer, it used to be within the conference, it was a 2-year sit out unless you got permission from the coach. Otherwise, if you were leaving the league, say going from Florida to Troy, it was a 1-year deal. When we started creeping into this immediate with all these hardship rules, you got to have teeth in everything. If you don't have teeth and you don't have structure, Matt, it's hard to function, isn't it?
No, it is. But I'm just telling you, to John's point, the successful coaches, I mean, I understand they're upset that they've changed the narrative, but then you got to figure it out. And I just think, if we're going to allow certain things to happen in our profession, and I will talk about Petrino here briefly. I mean, it just shows you where Texas A&M is in the process of finding someone who want to take that job, that the only candidate they can take that job is Bobby Petrino. Okay? Because whoever takes that job knows they're still not going to be able to call plays, right? John's 100% correct. It's all a money grab because Jimbo's still going to call the plays. He has, he will, and he will forever as long as he's the head coach. So I don't have as much sympathy for the coaches making the money they're making. Figure it out, Rob. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Yeah. Figure it out. We're still paying you guys. We're not cutting the checks, taking away those checks. So figure it out. That's my situation because, quite frankly, I do believe that student-athlete success and mental health are hand in hand. And what has happened here right now, coming out of COVID, we have a lot of tough situations going across our country. We really do. And, if I'm not happy, I've always told my players this. If you're not happy, I don't want you here because you're going to spread unhappiness amongst our team. Go ahead and go. I'll find someone who wants to be here. And that was always my mentality, though I got to be honest with you guys. I was always developing kids because our premise, number one, was on education. Second was on basketball. And these institutions we're talking about, that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, and you go back to that, and it is about the money. You're right. And we all like to get paid for what we do. I totally understand that. But what we've got now, John Hartwell, if you're an athletic director, and I've asked you this before, over 570 student athletes that were at Utah. Utah State's a big school. I don't think people realize Logan, Utah, 27,000 students, whatever. You had 550 plus student athletes that at any time may send you an email or a text or knock on your door. Hey, I'd like to talk to you. Talk about that.
Yeah. And that is becoming more and more frequent as you talk about, I think the term you use, bulldozer parents. Is that it? Maybe, Rob?
Snowplow parents that just push everything out of the way. Yeah. And give credit to our good friends, Kevin Skarbinski, for that one.
Yeah. And it used to be, at least at the collegiate level, where it was they were few and far between. You didn't have many parent calls directly to the athletic director. In the last 10 years, maybe 15 years, it started to increase. But I would say today's level is almost like it is when you're playing Little League baseball and you're coaching a Little League team, which, again, another kudos and hats off to folks who take the time to invest in our youth coaching. But that's a thankless job because, if Johnny's mom or dad calls you up and Johnny's not playing enough and every parent thinks their kid is going to be the next Michael Jordan or, Drew Brees. And that's just not the case. But we all think that as parents and you say, hey, why isn't Johnny playing or why isn't Julie playing? But you see that now on a regular basis in collegiate athletics. And we're not going to get political in this show, but the pendulum, it used to be, hey, if somebody has a challenge or a complaint, let's investigate that. But now on social media, if Johnny or Julie is not happy and they or their parent or their roommate or somebody fires an allegation out there on social media,
yeah,
you know, the expectation is, hey, you're not going to, you know, you don't need to investigate this. You need to do something right now about it. And it's a challenging situation because, you know, for all the times that there is absolute truth about that allegation, a lot of times there's the rest of the story. And in today's immediate judgment, you don't have time to find out the rest of the story oftentimes. And it puts athletic directors, it puts head coaches in difficult situations. I mean, look at the USA soccer coach right now and not condoning at all what he did in 1991, I think it was, but 30 plus years ago, you know, he did something that he regretted with his then girlfriend. They've been together 30 years since then. They just celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary. And somebody, in an attempt to blackball him or to do a smear job, has come out with this campaign. And in today's world, boom, one allegation out there without people listening to the rest of the story, and you're out on your ear. And it's a bad precedent.
Well, I was listening to a comedian, I think it was Bill Burr, recently. I mean, driving back from Atlanta, it was hilarious. He's talking about, you know, some guy, you know, it was something in 1971, and now the guy is 90 years old. It was 52 years ago. I mean, good grief. We have lost our way, and it is time of a return to alpha male culture. Hell, I remember doing a story as a TV reporter in the fall of 1989 at Fort Benning on the fitness training unit, FTU, Foxtrot Tango Uncle. Went out there to Fort Benning, and what the story was about was there were guys in basic training, and John, you can identify with this, who couldn't do 2 push-ups or even a chin-up or a pull-up. So I went out there, and like an idiot, I knocked out about 25 chin-ups and a bunch of pull-ups, and the drill sergeant came over there and he said, "Son, why don't you just sign up right now?" I said, no. I've got to go back to work. But point being, I said, how does this happen? He said, they had good recruiters. And he said, I can assure you, if they ever find their recruiters, they're probably going to want to get sideways with them. But I mean, that was 33 years ago. There's always been softness in society, but we got to get rid of it. We're going to talk about it right after this.
From Hewlett and Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hey, looking here at, when I think about, here it is, Buford T. Justice from Potts Camp, Mississippi wants to know if there's a video of you doing the chin-ups. No, I'm serious. I mean, ever since I was a kid, my dad always would put a chin-up bar. Now you got the multi-grip bars in the doorway. And my daughter, Hallie, in the 6th grade at St. Louis school, Catholic school, kindergarten through 8th grade in Memphis, located at Shady Grove and White Station. Love the place. It's our church. In the 2-minute PT test, she did 34 pull-ups in 2 minutes, and the closest boy to her was 13. So there's something good about putting a chin-up bar in the door. And now Hallie is little. She's not big, but she can lift. I think, what did she say? 200 pounds over her head. Wow. I think that's genetics, though. My dad was a middleweight powerlifting champion when he was in college at Auburn. No roids, of course. But anyway, let's go back to it. And Matt and John, you give such a great perspective. It's unique. It's special because you have interacted over your careers with thousands of student athletes. John, I went over to Rhodes. I spend a lot of time, I live in Memphis, but that campus is absolutely gorgeous. I went over there to Matt's office. We were talking back about a month and a half ago. Audrey and I did. God, the pride that Matt takes walking around that campus and the pride that you took around Utah State's campus, around Troy's campus, 10 years at Ole Miss. But you have interacted, both of you, with thousands of student athletes. What's the greatest reward? I'll start with you, John, that you get from people that you coached years later? Because it usually at the time, they probably aren't real high on you because you're making them work their tails off.
Yeah, I think you make a great point in terms of it usually is years later that your greatest satisfaction is when you see kids who come in as wide-eyed freshmen and they all think that they're going to be in the NBA or the WNBA or the NFL or whatever it may be. I mean, they've been high achievers because they wouldn't be a student athlete at the collegiate level if they weren't.
Yeah.
But that maturation process of going from a wide-eyed, know-it-all freshman, getting knocked down a notch or two, seeing that, they go from being a big fish in a small pond to just one of many talented people and dust themselves off from that and figure it out and become successful. And that doesn't always mean they're going to average 140 yards a game or average 18 points a game, but they find their niche. They're successful in the classroom. And then you see them become successful in career paths other than athletics. You see them become, good husbands or wives and parents and all of those things. And they come back and say, hey, John, or hey, Matt, or hey, Mr. Dean, hey, Mr. Hartwell, thank you so much for the knowledge you provided me and the insight and the guidance that you did, because I still use those things every day.
Yeah.
And I can think back, my high school basketball coach who passed away 20 plus years ago, but I can still think back, just like I do about my parents, about things that he told me and he taught me that I still use every day in life and have for the last 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think about most influential teachers, coaches I've ever had. I got to put at the top of the list, Brother Joel McGraw of CBHS, still goes to Mass at St. Louis every morning, 6:15, has his prayer list. I'll never forget summer school, air conditioning went out. It was 173 inside the building. I raised my hand, please, the air conditioning's not work. But he goes, Mr. Browne, are you through? I go, yes, sir. It is better to suffer. May we continue with the lesson? Yes, sir. Thank you. Matt D.
And Brother Joel was influential in both my children's lives because both my boys went to Christian Brothers High School, and he is one of the icons above icons out there in our city and in our country. But getting back to John's point, for me, it's very similar. I will tell you a quick coaching story. And I had a young lady as a first-year player that had a bad practice, and I was always really a stickler for transition defense. And she turned the ball over at half court, and other player gets it, goes down layup, and she's basically at half court. And I had enough, and I told her to leave practice. You probably don't see that side of me in the radio show, but I had that side. And 5 years later, I'm writing a letter of recommendation for her to get into graduate school. And our relationship came a long way. Obviously, there was some maturation on her part to figure out what I was looking for. But yet what people will realize is coaches have to meet in the middle too sometimes. We got to figure out the strengths and weaknesses of our players. And what's been great for me is just the amount of success my student athletes have had once they leave Rhodes. And that's just like John said, a thank you goes a long way. And we always talk about that with our teams is just how important it is to realize that you're not in that person's shoe when you say certain things, and just to make sure you're not too judgmental. But also I want to touch on how the AD role has changed. I'm only John's a veteran. I did the AD role for 3 years. I'm an associate AD now, but it's really turned into, at my level, a human resource job. And it's imperative that you hire the right coaches. And I will tell you, for every successful coach I've hired, I've made mistakes too. And you can vet someone out. It's almost like a recruit, John. I watch you play in high school and I get all this information on you, but I don't know how good you are until I see you practice every day. Really, until I have you in my court. It's the same thing as an employee. Until I see this coach and their work ethic, I'll go back to even Brian Hartson. They probably knew 2 weeks on the job, Rob, that they had made a mistake because this guy wasn't doing what they thought the norm was. Let's just use recruiting as an example.
Yes.
Some of the high schools that they traditionally went into, he's like, well, maybe I don't need to do that, right? And I don't know the story. I'm not going to speak for anyone. But it's the same thing when you hire an employee. Like 2 years ago, our football program, coming off of COVID, had won one football game in 2 years. And my last task as AD was to hire a new football program. And, this year, 2 years later, we're 5-5. And with just one class of kids. So to me, that's one of my proudest moments.
Yeah.
Identifying for that group of 9 football athletes that was on our search committee, our student leadership group, those kids they put their trust in me to find the right leader.
Yeah.
And that's what an AD does. An AD goes out there, but it's changed because there's so many search firms that are involved. There's so many other factors involved. The AD used to be the person 30 years ago that their gut was the one that went out and made that hire. It's changed a lot, I'm assuming, John.
Yeah, it really has. And you talk about the factors that are in there, and it's normally not a one-person decision. I mean, I was fortunate enough in a couple of hires, whether it was Blake Anderson or whether it was, Ryan Odom, who's now the basketball coach at Utah State. I pretty much was able to do those and just, hey, I'm going to go off the grid for 10 days and I'm going to go find the right person. But that doesn't happen now. You have donor influence. Like you said, you have search firm influence. You have search firms who some have their own group their pool that they want to hire from. And so there are a lot of factors in it, but you make a great point. And I once had someone tell me this: no matter how good you are as an HR person, as a hiring person, and this applies to athletics, this applies to the private world, it on your best day is a 75% proposition. So if you can say 3 out of the 4 people you hire are going to be a good fit, you've done a good job. Because like you said, there's just too many things that background checks or talking to former colleagues, things like that you're not going to find out. I mean, one of the things I tell young people when I talk to them all the time about applying for a job, I said, hey, you can do that list of 6 or 8 or 10 references, but a seasoned hiring person or committee is not going to talk to any of those people. I mean, who in the world would put on their reference list somebody who's going to bash them? But you are going to find out where they worked, some people that you trust, your inner circle, who you can call and say, hey, give me the real skinny on this person. That's how that works.
Yeah. So going to that, I always like to have this scenario. We talk about the super booster, Foghorn Leghorn. He's going to come in there and he's just going to say, well, I've got this here. This is my man right here. He's Howard Sprague. He's needs to be your coach, and I'll write you a big check. And you're like going, holy cow, Howard Sprague's 47 years old and still lives with his mother. I don't think so. Well, this is the question I'm going to throw to both of y'all. You got the guy, Foghorn Leghorn, is doing an NIL deal for $3 million for a 5-star quarterback. Joey Bag of Donuts. I don't care what his name is, but That's his guy. Well, he expects him to start, and he goes, he's going to lead us to the national championship. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, you get him out there, and about halfway through the season, you got to bench him because he's selling weed out of his dorm room. He's got a grow light in his closet. I mean, you know, got a problem. And all of a sudden, Foghorn says, well, I have directed my controller of the company to not continue to ACH those funds into the NIL account. What's that discussion like? Matt, John, somebody want to take that one on?
Well, John would probably deal with that more than I would, because in my level, I wish I had a Foghorn Leghorn, because I'd take the money and we'd make the best of the situation, because I'm looking for that $3 million gift. But, you know, John, I know you've been at several places where those are probably some pretty good comparisons.
Yeah, I think the biggest key is, as an athletic director, and you see this happen, gosh, more often now than not. But, you know, there have been many outstanding athletic directors who have had their careers either derailed or, you know, at least put on hold for a little bit because of the lack of support from the university president. I mean, ultimately, an athletic director answers to the president of the university in vast majority of cases. And as long as you've got the support of your president and your president believing in what you're doing and the methodology of how you do it, you've got to hold firm. But if you have a situation, which this happens again more often than people want to believe, if your president says, oh yeah, I've got your back, do what you need to, I've got your back, and then all of a sudden one day, well, we're going to have to cower down to Foghorn Leghorn, and
yes,
you got
sir.
to do what he wants to, then it's over. And that happens way more than people believe it does.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it is you've got that big money, and that's what I'm saying. I just think, again, I go back to the financial markets. Both of y'all have a lot of athletic administration skills, but you also have strong business acumen. You are very insightful. Markets always correct themselves. I would go back to the late 90s. People, you know, you can throw darts against the wall. Fifth graders could pick stocks in this market. Well, that might be the case. But remember, all those on TV, they had these, you know, sixth graders would put a portfolio together and make money. Just remember, they weren't using real money.
Correct.
32, my 32nd year as a financial advisor, there's a difference between being shot with, you know, Nerf balls and real bullets coming over your head. Nothing got my attention more quickly. Being out one time out at Fort Benning as a reporter on a live fire exercise with 3rd Ranger Battalion, and they said, Scoop, keep your head down. We'll be firing 50 cals 3 feet over your head. I'm like, yes, sir. He goes, don't say, sir, son. I work for a living. You know that one, John Hartwell. But I said, yes, thumbs up. But you got to listen. And I just see you're playing with real money. The markets correct themselves. And in March of 2000, when the NASDAQ imploded, markets blew up, go back to 08, 09, another nightmare scenario. It's all about customer behavior. And for both of y'all, I just think wealthy people, again, that's what I do in addition to this, wealth management. They will question a $50 IRA fee, okay, or $75 transfer fee. I don't think there's an inlet. There's going to be enough of these things blow up and people are going to say, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. I mean, how many times do you give your kid his allowance when you know he's doing bad things with it before you cut him off? And that's where we're going with this, gentlemen. I really think so. Let me say this too. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us and go out and help people with the expectation of getting nothing in return. I like to tell people that every day because that's what we try to do and find excuses to win. There's a lot of great things happening out there. One of the cool things we do on Sidelines is we get smart people, you know, like David Schultz, Gary Harris, John Hartwell, Matt Dean. We try to solve all the world's problems in a 2-hour window every day. How'd we do today, guys?
Hey, Rob, I'll take just 30 seconds to say this, because what you just said,
2-minute warning,
helping somebody without an expectation in return. That's how the golden rule is intended to work. Not, hey, he who has the gold rules. That's so important.
I tell you who says that to me every time I talk to him is our good friend Jay Evers, a native of Dadeville, Alabama. I've known Jay for, well, this fall will be 40 years. He's a year below me, but Matt, I mean, that's the cool thing about it. And I didn't realize that your boys had both graduated from the Rock. That's what I call CBHS. And Brother Joel, Coach Canale, Coach Nix. You just think about all the great ones out there. That's a special place. But guys, a lot of fun always. We got about a minute left. The AD angle, man, next week we're going to get more into basketball. So guys, we got a lot going on. We're transitioning, but this national championship game, real quick, Matt, give me your pick, and John, give me your pick, and then we'll be out of here.
I'm going with Georgia. I think they survived their scare. They should not still be here. They're here. They will win.
John Hartwell.
I agree with Matt there. Like I said, I think most people who don't have a dog in the hunt are going to be cheering for TCU. Yeah. But I think Bowers, the tight end for Georgia, is the difference. Here's one quick thing about an LA and SoFi Stadium is unbelievable. We played the bowl game there last year when I was at Utah State. But here's the crazy thing right now. Tickets are going for under face value for that game now, which is
no tailgating. Really that's why.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, look, great stuff, everybody. Have a great day. We got a great show tomorrow. Until then, thanks so much for listening. We are out of here.